It was the 5th year of my marriage to Shu Hanqing when he began an affair with my illegitimate sister, who soon conceived his child. Everyone said that back then, he was a weak scholar, unable to lift a chicken, yet he had dared to charge alone into the bandits' den and rescue me from a hail of blades. I was the apple of his eye, but at this moment, he was prostrate before my illegitimate sister's chest, caressing her belly with a gentle voice. From now on, the child in your belly will be the sole heir of the Shu family. The day he brought Xie Yanwan into the mansion as his concubine, news of the disappearance of the main wife of the Shu mansion spread through every street and alley of Bianqing. That night, thunder roared and dark clouds covered the sky. Recently, my husband had been ordered to supervise the construction of the river embankment near the capital, often returning only in the dead of night, worried that heavy rain was imminent. I called for Biyu, grabbed an umbrella, and prepared some pastries to send to the military camp. As soon as I arrived at the camp, I saw from a distance that the lanterns in my husband's shed were brightly lit. The sound of him drinking and playing dice with his colleagues drifted over. Not only is Master Shu skilled in boxing, but is also quite good at charming women, one man joked. Yes, Master Shu is truly blessed with beauty now. Having both a Huang and Nuying, a metaphor for two beloved wives, to himself we brothers are utterly envious. I heard every word clearly outside the shed, my chest feeling as if pressed by a heavy stone, making it hard to breathe. Don't speak nonsense, Shu Hanqing said. To this day, I have only one legal wife. Jinxian is the only wife of my life. The wooden door creaked open halfway in the strong wind. Inside the shed, Shu Hanqing was intoxicated, but his voice was firm and resolute. You all know how I risked my life alone to rescue her from the bandits' den back then. She is the wife I fought tooth and nail to marry. How could I ever betray her? A smile involuntarily lifted the corners of my mouth, and my grip on the umbrella handle loosened slightly. The atmosphere inside the shed suddenly turned heavy. I took a small step forward, ready to push the door open, but he suddenly let out a sneer. It was only after marriage that I learned the truth. She is not as pure and noble as she seems. Is there anyone here who hasn't heard of her romantic escapades in her maiden years? After speaking, he glanced around, his brows filled with self-mockery. I stood frozen, my outstretched hand slowly drawing back. His colleagues all hung their heads in silence. He smiled ambiguously again. It's just that I found out too late. Such a cold and noble woman. Yet, forget it, forget it. Let's drink. He raised his wine glass again, the clinking of porcelain making a harsh, grating sound. I tightened my grip on the umbrella handle unconsciously, tears of shame and anger welling up in my eyes. Where had he heard such slander? How dared he join with outsiders to treat my maiden reputation as gossip over drinks and meals? Suddenly, the sky poured down with torrential rain, and everyone rushed to the river to reinforce the embankment. At that moment, a woman's soft, coquettish murmur came from inside the shed. Hanlang, what about me? The half-open door was slightly ajar. Inside the shed sat a graceful woman, gazing at Shu Hanqing with tender affection. She turned her head slightly, her face indistinct. She is your only wife, then what am I? As she spoke, she dabbed the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief, her shoulders trembling slightly, looking utterly pitiful. Shu Hanqing pulled her tightly into his arms. You are my personal confidant, Shu Hanqing's exclusive soulmate. In my heart, no one can compare to you. After speaking, just as he used to do when teasing me at home, he gently scraped the tip of her nose with his index finger. The woman finally smiled through her tears, revealing her true face. I stared intently. It was Xie Yanwan, the daughter of my father's mistress, my illegitimate sister. How could it be her? I shook my head unconsciously, my whole body trembling. The umbrella in my hand suddenly opened, the bamboo ribs piercing my palm, oozing tiny drops of blood. I watched as he knelt before Xie Yanwan's chest, caressing her belly softly. No matter how good Jinxian is, she cannot continue the Shu family line. From now on, the child in your belly will be the sole heir of the Shu family. Xie Yanwan smiled faintly. What about sister? Shu Hanqing slowly stood up, his expression turning solemn. Her romantic indiscretions in her maiden years are already known to everyone. Otherwise, how would she have been willing to marry me, a man of humble origins? Back then, that child she had before, I was the one who had someone abort it, not for any other reason. but to preserve the pure bloodline of the Shu family. It's just that no one expected it would leave her infertile. He let out a soft sigh. I stumbled backward, staring at Shu Hanqing in the shed in disbelief. Grief and anger churning in my heart. My Yao Yao, he was the one who had killed her. Xie Yanwan stroked his cheek, smiling cunningly. When sister was pregnant with Yao Yao, you took ruthless action. Her 8-month-old baby was born prematurely and died as soon as it was born. Sister barely escaped with her life. Now, not only can she not bear heirs for you, Hanlang, but it's even difficult for you to share a bed with her. That leaves only the child in my belly as the sole heir. But Hanlang, when will you marry me into the mansion? The child in my belly can't wait much longer. Shu Hanqing kissed her slightly swollen belly. Don't worry, haven't I already bought you the entire silverware shop? Before the child is born, I will definitely give both you and the baby a proper status. My legs gave way, and I collapsed to the ground, looking around dazedly, sobbing uncontrollably. I clutched the sand and gravel on the ground tightly in my hands. If my lord is not as steadfast as a boulder, why should I be like the tough, silk-like reed? When we tied the knot as husband and wife, we loved each other without a shadow of doubt. I thought he was busy with official duties, feeling sorry for him leaving early and returning late every day. Little did I know, he was busy accompanying his beloved. He said we needed to cut expenses in the mansion, making me live a frugal life. Yet he spent a fortune buying an entire silverware shop for Xie Yanwan. Back then, he was my father's most promising pupil. Once he passed the imperial examination, he became a sought-after third-place scholar, admired by numerous powerful families who vied to marry their daughters to him. But he remained indifferent. Instead, he came to the Prime Minister's mansion more frequently, asking my father for advice on court affairs. Over time, my father realized that he had fallen in love with me. During a trip to Guishan Temple to burn incense and pray to Buddha, I was abducted by mountain bandits. At the critical moment, he stepped forward, rescuing me from the blades while sustaining severe injuries himself. Taking this opportunity, my father betrothed me to him as a reward for saving my life. His official career flourished, earning the emperor's favor. Now, he was even my father's right-hand man in the court. If I insisted on a divorce, how could my father agree? Bu helped me up in panic, holding the paper umbrella high above my head, but I accidentally knocked it out of her hand. I stumbled back to the Shu mansion in the pouring rain, heading straight to the Osmanthus tree in the backyard, where Yaoiro's tombstone stood. Tears streamed down my face like rain. Suddenly, a paper umbrella shielded me from the rain. My lady, are you missing Yao Yao again? You must take care of your health, Shu Hanqing said. He bent down to help me, but I dodged instinctively. His outstretched left hand froze in midair. My lady, are you angry? The construction of the river embankment is really cumbersome, and I couldn't spare any time. Please forgive me. Once I finish this work in a few days, I will definitely spend more time with you. I looked up at him. The moment our eyes met, I seemed to see a hint of complacency in his gaze. Now that he was rising steadily in his career and his mistress was pregnant, he was at the height of his fortune. I forced myself to stay calm, not letting him see the pain and hatred in my heart. No, it's just that you smell of perfume, and I've always been allergic to fragrances. He smelled faintly of rose water, undoubtedly. His outer robe had absorbed the scent during his tryst with Xie Yanwan. Shu Hanqing sniffed himself vigorously, a trace of imperceptible guilt flickering in his eyes. Perhaps I accidentally spilled wine on my robe while drinking with Zhong Han and the others just now. I curled my lips but said nothing more. Taking his hand and slowly standing up, he put his arm around my waist, tilting the umbrella mostly over me. Along the way, he kept urging me to be careful not to catch cold, and told Bu to boil ginger soup overnight, personally feeding it to me. His care for me was as attentive as ever, yet my heart felt like burnt incense, nothing but a pile of cold ashes. The next day, I still developed a high fever. Shu Hanqing frowned, touching my forehead from time to time with the back of his hand. He ordered a carriage to be prepared, planning to take me to Huichun Hall to see a doctor. Just then, a servant whispered something in his ear. His face showed hesitation, his eyes wavering. My lady, the heavy rain last night destroyed a section of the embankment. I have to go to the scene to inspect it. My head was spinning, but I nodded. Official duties are important. Go quickly. After he left, Seeing that my high fever hadn't subsided, Bu hired another carriage for me. When we arrived at Huichun Hall, we saw our family's carriage parked at the door. I felt confused. As soon as I entered, I saw Xie Yanwan consulting the doctor, but there was no sign of Xu Hanqing. "Madam, your pulse is stable," the old doctor said. "I'll prescribe some antifetal medicine to strengthen your vitality. With proper rest for a few more days, this pregnancy will be secure." Listening to the doctor's diagnosis, the last embers of hope in my heart were blown away. She stood up to take her leave, and the moment she turned around, she met my complicated gaze. She froze for a moment, then a mysterious smile appeared on her face, proudly protruding her belly. She swaggered toward me. "Oh, sister, are you ill again?" I looked at her belly, finding it glaringly offensive. When I was pregnant with Yao Yao, my belly had been just as round. She stroked her belly, her eyebrows and eyes full of provocation. "Sister, guess who the father of the child in my belly is?" A cold wind blew, and I began to cough violently. Seeing this, Bu draped a cloak over my shoulders. Xie Yanwan leaned closer, whispering in my ear, "It's brother-in-law's." She thought I still knew nothing, waiting to see me lose control of my emotions. Very well, I would play along with her act. Enraged, I pushed her away roughly. "What nonsense are you talking about? You're an unmarried girl. How dare you commit such a shameless act and slander your brother-in-law? Do you not care about your own reputation, or do you want to ruin his official career?" She put one hand on her waist and the other on the table, smiling contemptuously. "Han Lang will soon take me into the mansion as his wife. Father has already discussed the date with him, only you are kept in the dark. You've been married for years without bearing any children. Han Lang pities you, which is why he lets you keep the position of main wife. If you know what's good for you, you should hand over the position of mistress to me as soon as possible." My head felt even more muddled. I never imagined that this was my father's scheme. "You're just as lowly as your mother, always wanting to be someone's mistress," I spat. When Xie Yanwan heard this, her eyes turned bloodshot. She clenched her fists and lunged at me, ready to strike. "Don't mention my mother," she shrieked. Back then, my mother was going to take me back to the Prime Minister's mansion to claim my rightful place in the family. It was your mother, that woman from the General's mansion, who drove her to smash her head against a pillar and commit suicide on the spot. You are all murderers who killed her." With that, she lunged at me again, intent on hitting me, but the moment she touched me, I collapsed to the ground, as if struck by a cruel twist of fate. Xu Hanqing walked in just then, witnessing everything. I thought he would stay by my side, as he always had, but when I woke up, he was nowhere to be found. Bu rushed back to the Prime Minister's mansion to beg my mother for help, who sent Imperial Physician Zhong to treat me. Imperial Physician Zhong told me that the wind cold was no longer a serious issue. After more than a year of recuperation, my body had recovered significantly. I would be able to share a bed with Xu Hanqing again in a few days. Once, this news would have filled me with joy, but now, I never wanted him to touch me again. I slipped a silver ingot to Imperial Physician Zhong, urging him to keep this to himself. Then I drifted off to sleep once more. In the evening, I woke up again to find Xu Hanqing sitting by my bed, holding my hand as if deep in thought. I tried to pull my hand away, but he tightened his grip. He looked slightly exhausted. Xie Yanwan had suffered a threatened miscarriage after our fight. He had abandoned me to accompany Xie Yanwan to see countless doctors, personally boiling and feeding her medicine, comforting her with gentle words. Only when her condition stabilized did he return to see me. My heart ached as if it had been torn out. Once, I had thought his tenderness belonged solely to me. Today, I realized that had been my deepest misunderstanding of him. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Yanwan is carrying my child. I've discussed it with father-in-law. We plan to bring her into the mansion on the 15th day of this month. Your health has always been poor. Think of her as bearing a child for both of us. That way, you won't have to endure the pain of childbirth again." Once, I had felt guilty for being too weak after my difficult delivery to fulfill my marital duties for years. Every time we talked about it, he would look at me firmly and say, "My heart is not a stone, it cannot be turned." I had thought I was blessed to marry such a kind and understanding man. Now, I thought it was utterly ridiculous. I brushed the tears from the corners of my eyes. He grew even more flustered. With a loud thud, he knelt down at the foot of my bed. "My lady, once you recover, you can beat me, scold me anything you want. Just don't ignore me." Faced with his seemingly deep affection, I remained indifferent, my heart calm as still water. I sighed softly, "Get up. It's all my fault for being so weak. It was only a matter of time before you took a concubine, especially since father has approved it. But my health still needs more time to recover. I'm afraid I won't be able to help with the wedding arrangements." The furrow between his brows eased slightly. He slowly stood up and spoke many comforting words to me, but my thoughts had wandered far away, already filled with other plans. I had thought that with Xie Yanwan heavily pregnant, the wedding would be a simple affair. To my surprise, she insisted that all the rituals be performed as if she were a legal wife, desperate, it seemed, to announce her unmarried pregnancy to the world. Helpless, Xu Hanqing hired a wedding planner to arrange everything. The mansion was draped in bright crimson silk. Ancient trees in the courtyard were tied with concentric knots, and red lanterns lined the corridors. Dazedly, I was transported back to our wedding day. He had led me to bid farewell to my parents, accepting the blessings of all the guests. Red candles flickered as we drank the nuptial wine together. Intoxicated by the wine, he had held me in his arms, whispering repeatedly in my ear, "I wish to win one's heart, and never part until death." Now, the oath still lingered, but the man was already a stranger. Why should I cling to the empty title of main wife, confining myself to this tiny space? As the entire Xu mansion bustled with wedding preparations, no one noticed a small sedan chair covered with double-sided Pingjiang embroidery silk parked at the side gate. The next day, halfway through the wedding ceremony, the bridegroom suddenly left. The reason? The main wife he had sent for repeatedly, Xie Jinxian, was gone. He rushed frantically to the backyard and pushed open Xie Jinxuan's door. At a glance, the room was clean and tidy, just as it had been when she was there. His anxious heart eased slightly, and hope flickered within him, but he searched every corner of the room, and there was no sign of Xie Jinxian. It was not until he saw the pearl hairpin he had given her lying alone on the dressing table, while all her other jewelry was gone, that his heart turned cold. On ordinary days, this pearl hairpin had been her most cherished accessory, something she wore every day, but today, it was the only one left. A faint unease crept over Xu Hanqing. He felt Xie Jinxian slipping farther and farther away from him. He wanted to find Biyu and question her closely. Then he remembered that in recent days, he had assigned Biyu to help with the wedding arrangements in the front hall, sending away the only person she could confide in, and he had been so busy with official duties and the wedding that he had had no time to care for her while she was ill. Xu Hanqing was so anxious that he kept hitting his head. He tried to comfort himself. Perhaps Xie Jinxian had been angry and had deliberately left to relax somewhere, avoiding the wedding preparations, and hadn't returned yet. He sent men to look for her at the Peony Pavilion and Zuyu Tower, places she often visited to admire flowers, but there was no trace of her there. Only one person reported seeing a woman with a figure similar to hers boarding a small sedan chair, but no one knew where it had gone. He sent more men to search and inquire near the city gates, but still found nothing. Finally, panic overcame him. He remembered her once saying she admired Zhuo Wenjun's line, "Hearing that you have two hearts, I have come to sever our bond." He remembered her saying that when a woman faced betrayal in love, she should be so resolute. At the time, he had laughed at her, asking how many women in the world could survive without a man, but now, she had vanished into thin air. Only then did he realize she had not been speaking lightly. She was different from other women. The more he thought about it, the more despair he felt. Clutching the pearl hairpin tightly in his hand, he curled up on the bed where they had once played and laughed, slowly closing his eyes. He wished that when he opened them, everything would be as before. Xie Jinxian lying in his arms, acting coquettishly. He wished they were still lying on the bed, discussing ancient and modern poems, talking about the colorful life depicted in them. But for some reason, he felt an inexplicable fear. He was afraid that she would be as resolute as she had said and that he would never find her again. Just then, a servant rushed in to report. He thought there was finally news of her. He thought she would never be able to leave him after all. But the servant told him that Xie Yanwan, abandoned by him at the wedding and mocked by everyone, had been overcome with anger. She had thrown a violent fit in front of all the guests, and her condition had worsened, with signs of bleeding again. Xu Hanqing stood up and kicked over a stool in the room. Is she trying to make things even more chaotic? If she hadn't insisted on a legal wife ceremony, Jinxian would never have run away. Angry as he was, he sent for a doctor immediately. Despite the doctor's best efforts, only the mother was barely saved. The child was lost, in a single day. He had lost his wife and his son. The farcical wedding had also become the talk of the entire city. Overnight, grey hairs had sprouted all over his head. The next day, news of the disappearance of the main wife of the Shu mansion spread through every street and alley of Biancheng. Meanwhile, I was in Pingjiang County, listening to storytelling and eating iced cheese. During my recuperation at the Shu mansion, I had written a letter to Yunyang. She had been my playmate when I was a child, staying at my grandmother's house. Now she ran her own embroidery workshop. We had kept in touch through letters all these years, completely unknown to Shu Hanqing. When she heard about my suffering, she invited me to Pingjiang County to run the embroidery workshop with her. Taking the remaining part of my dowry, I had secretly left for Pingjiang County alone in a small sedan chair, without telling anyone. In the years that followed, Yunyang and I called ourselves cousins, jointly running Nishang Workshop. I had a new identity, Guo Wanxin, the second owner of Nishang Workshop and Yunyang's cousin, combining Yunyang's unique double-sided embroidery with my painting skills honed since childhood. Our works, half embroidered, half painted, were unique and stood out among the many embroidery workshops in Pingjiang County. A folk ballad even spread. Embroidered flowers exude fragrance, embroidered birds seem to sing, embroidered tigers appear ready to run, embroidered people are vivid and lifelike. Soon, this ballad reached the palace. Men from the palace came, ordering Nishang Workshop to embroider a congratulatory piece for the Empress Dowager's 60th birthday. With time pressing, Yunyang and I worked day and night, finally completing 100 birds worshipping the phoenix just before the Empress Dowager's birthday. One side was embroidered with pine trees, cranes, and 100 birds of different shapes and colors using ice silk. The other side was embroidered with a birthday celebration scene using gold thread. Under different lights, the 100 birds appeared in different postures, afraid of making a mistake during the presentation. The palace eunuchs brought Yunyang and me to the palace to present the gift in person. On the day of the birthday banquet, the eunuchs led Yunyang and me into the main hall, holding 100 birds worshipping the phoenix. As the setting sun streamed into the hall, Yunyang and I slowly unfolded the embroidery. The 100 birds displayed countless postures in the light and shadow, even attracting cranes to stop for a moment. Everyone in the hall was amazed. The Empress Dowager was overjoyed, praising the Empress for her virtue and discerning eye. To show his filial piety, the Emperor personally wrote a golden plaque for Nishang Workshop on the spot. Following suit, the Empress rewarded us with 100 taels of gold. Yunyang and I were so excited that we kowtowed repeatedly, almost knocking our heads against the ground. Shu Hanqing, who was serving as the Minister of Revenue, watched everything from the side. The Empress Dowager was very interested in our double-sided embroidery and invited Yunyang and me to stay in the palace for a few days to exchange embroidery skills with the ladies of the Embroidery Academy. I never expected that Shu Hanqing would stop me on the corridor of the palace. After all these years, his temples were streaked with grey, and his eye sockets were slightly sunken, probably from years of poring over official documents. Jinxian, his voice trembled. His eyes filled with doubt and hesitation. Before coming to the palace, I had found a skilled makeup artist in Pingjiang Prefecture who had taught me disguise techniques. I had thought I would not be recognized today. My lord, my name is Wanxin, I replied calmly. I'm afraid the darkness has made you mistake me for someone else. He gave a bitter smile, the light in his eyes dimming instantly. My apologies, young lady. Please forgive my rudeness, it's just. The way you smiled happily in the hall is almost identical to my wife's. I smiled softly. Many people share similarities in appearance and expression. If there's nothing else, my lord, I shall take my leave. I bowed respectfully and turned to leave. He stood there, looking lost and desolate. The next day, palace maids brought many food boxes to my room along with a handwritten letter from Shu Hanqing, apologizing for his rudeness the previous day. The food boxes contained my favorite Biancheng pastries from years ago, as well as a valuable purple jade writing brush. I distributed the pastries to the palace maids and had the writing brush returned. Then I went to the embroidery academy with Yun Yang to discuss embroidery techniques with the other ladies. On our way back, a palace maid led me alone to the Mid-Lake Pavilion. Xu Hanqing was already waiting there. He nodded and smiled at me. Miss Wan Xin. Did you not like the purple jade writing brush? I lowered my head and bowed to him. Thank you for your kindness, my lord, but I cannot accept such an expensive gift without having done anything to deserve it. It is too precious for me. He frowned and took a step closer. I hear you are skilled at painting, he said. Teaming up with your cousin, you created the new double-sided embroidery that blends embroidery with painting. I admire your talent greatly, Miss Wan Xin. So I had someone find this goat hair brush for you. I hope it will inspire you to create many more exquisite embroidery works. Please accept it. With that, he held out a sandalwood box. It seemed he had already been investigating my identity, which was how he knew about my cousin relationship with Yun Yang. If he dug deeper, it wouldn't be long before my true identity was exposed. I had no choice but to stall him for time and find a way to leave the palace as soon as possible. I took the sandalwood box. Thank you, Master Xu, I said with a bow. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, but his gaze never left me. I excused myself, saying I still had matters to attend to at the embroidery academy, and bowed to take my leave. He watched me go, his expression ambiguous, his eyes hiding emotions I couldn't fathom. The autumn sun shone brightly. Yun Yang and I accompanied the Empress Dowager to Guishan Temple a few days earlier. The Empress Dowager had summoned us to the Cunning Palace. She planned to visit Guishan Temple on an auspicious day to pray for blessings and ordered us to embroider the Heart Sutra with gold and silver threads to present at the temple. Yun Yang and I accepted the order with gratitude and took the opportunity to express our desire to leave the palace. Your Majesty, my cousin and I have already stayed in the palace for many days. We wish to return to Pingjiang Prefecture soon to proclaim the imperial grace far and wide, I said. The Empress Dowager readily agreed. If all went well, we could leave Bianqing after today's prayer ceremony. The heart I had been hanging finally relaxed. From now on, I would never have to see Xu Hanqing again. Inside the main hall, the embroidery presentation ceremony was underway. From a distance, I spotted two familiar figures. They were looking right at me. It was Mother and Biyu. Tears of joy filled my eyes after all these years apart. I quietly slipped into the side hall, and Mother and Biyu followed closely behind. As it turned out, Mother had come to the temple as the relative of a high-ranking official to join the prayer ceremony. Perhaps it was the bond between mother and daughter that had allowed her to recognize me in the crowd early on. No matter how skilled my disguise was, I could never escape my mother's eyes. The moment we recognized each other, we embraced and wept. Mother couldn't wait to ask me about everything that had happened since I disappeared. She was overjoyed to hear that I had made a name for myself in Pingjiang Prefecture, and cursed Xu Hanqing and Xie Yanwan thoroughly in front of me. Biyu also reported to me everything I had asked her to investigate before I left Bianqing. Mother sighed softly. It's all your father's fault for keeping that mistress. It brought you so much suffering. My daughter, we, as your parents, have failed you, she said, covering her face and sobbing. I held her tightly, comforting her gently, and told her I would leave Bianqing today to avoid any further trouble. Though reluctant to part with me, Mother wanted me to live a peaceful life. So after Yun Yang and I bid farewell to the Empress Dowager, she personally accompanied us to the city gate. I waved goodbye to Mother with tears in my eyes, but just as we reached the city gate, I saw Xu Hanqing waiting there. He seemed to have known all along that we would leave today. I was about to pull Yun Yang away to hide when he walked toward us. Are the two young ladies returning to Pingjiang Prefecture? He asked. I nodded. We are in a hurry to continue our journey, so we won't linger to chat with you, my lord, I said, turning to leave the city. But he shouted loudly to stop me. Wait, then, his voice filled with doubt, he asked, should I call you Xie Jinxian, or Guo Wanxin? As I feared, he had found out the truth. I signaled to Yun Yang to leave first, then slowly turned around to meet his probing gaze. He walked toward me step by step, trembling as he grabbed my shoulders, his eyes fixed on mine. Jinxian, it really is you, he whispered. I tried to pull away, but he held me tighter. You've finally come back, he said, his voice breaking. I missed you so much. With that, he pulled me tightly into his arms. The city gate was crowded with people, all staring at us with strange looks. I pushed him away forcefully. Master Shu, what are you doing? I snapped. This is not the first time you've mistaken me for your wife. I wanted to know how much he had found out, so I pretended not to realize he already knew the truth, but he quickly wiped his face with his sleeve. A look of triumph spreading across his features, he calmly took out a stack of rice paper from his bosom. On them were the testimonies of witnesses he had sent someone to gather in Pingjiang Prefecture. Denying it any longer was useless. If he reported this to the emperor, accusing me of deceiving the imperial family, my life would be in danger. I decided to take him to a private room at Fanlu to talk things through. To avoid any further complications, he sat right next to me. His eyes glued to me as if I would disappear at any moment. He tried to hold my hand, but I him sharply. He spoke in a hoarse voice. Come back to the mansion with me. We can be a loving couple again. Just like before. I shook my head, letting out a cold laugh. No matter how good I am, I can't bear heirs for the Shu family. Besides, you already have your confidant Xie Yanwan in the Shu mansion. He stared at me in shock. You heard everything. I took a sip of cold tea, twirling the teacup in my hand. Suddenly, he stood up and knelt before me, grabbing the hem of my skirt and begging for forgiveness. I gave a bitter smile. Forgiveness? Why don't you ask Yao Yao if she can forgive you? I told him everything Bu had uncovered, without holding back. It turned out that Xie Yanwan had harbored a deep hatred for the Prime Minister's mansion because of her mother's death. She had plotted to frame me when I was still an unmarried maiden, luring me to Guishan Temple alone to meet a stranger in the main hall. After that, she spread rumors everywhere to ruin my reputation, even exaggerating the incident to Shu Hanqing, making him believe I had been promiscuous before marriage. She had incited him to harm his own unborn child, leading to my difficult delivery and the death of our baby. Every one of these acts was Xie Yanwan's revenge against the Prime Minister's mansion, but Shu Hanqing had blindly trusted her, breaking his vows and carrying on an affair with her in secret. When Shu Hanqing heard all this, he collapsed to the ground. He had killed his own child with his own hands. He beat the floor frantically with his fists, muttering impossible over and over again. He laughed wildly one moment, then sobbed uncontrollably the next. He seemed to have lost his mind. I tried to take the opportunity to leave, but he blocked the door, refusing to let me go. Jinxian, you are my only wife. You can't leave me, he cried. I slapped him hard across the face. This slap is for Yao Yao. If you have even an ounce of sincerity for me, let me go. Stop pestering me. He clung to the door, refusing to move. By a stroke of luck, his colleague Zhong Han, now the Minister of Personnel, happened to pass by. He had just received the Empress Dowager's edict to escort Yunyang and me back to Pingjiang Prefecture. Shu Hanqing wanted to stop us, but he was afraid of losing his composure in front of his colleague and damaging his official reputation. Reluctantly, he left. Finally, I was able to leave Biancheng smoothly. The carriage traveled steadily toward Pingjiang Prefecture. Although I had met Zhong Han a few times before through Shu Hanqing, we had no private relationship. Why had he gone out of his way to help me today? I was filled with doubts. Quietly, he took off his cloak and held it out to me. The wind is cold at night, and your health is not good. Please put this on to avoid catching cold, he said, his voice calm and gentle. I took the cloak and nodded at him, but I noticed the nervousness in his eyes. He kept rubbing his hands together. After a moment of silence, he began to speak, every word clear and earnest. It turned out that he was the stranger Xie Yanwan had tricked into meeting me at Guishan Temple that day. He had fallen in love with me at first sight, but had been unable to find any information about me afterward. After passing the imperial examination, he had become Shu Hanqing's colleague, which allowed him to see me again, but I was already married, so he had hidden his feelings deep in his heart. Later, when he heard that I had disappeared on the day Shu Hanqing took a concubine, he secretly began searching for me everywhere. It was not until I appeared again at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet that he finally got the chance to confess his feelings. He knew everything about my past with Shu Hanqing. If I was willing, he had ways to ensure Shu Hanqing would never pester me again. I could continue to live as Guo Wanxin forever. I looked into his firm, affectionate eyes, and my heart stirred slightly. Nearly 30 years old, he was still unmarried. If he had really waited all these years for me, His sincerity was enough to move heaven and earth, but the years I had spent in Pingjiang Prefecture had taught me that life could be free and unrestrained. A woman didn't have to marry, have children, or rely on a man to survive. I was unwilling to sacrifice my freedom again for a reliance that could change at any moment. I didn't want to repeat the same mistakes. Perhaps he saw my hesitation. He smiled softly and said slowly, "Miss Wanxin, we have a long future ahead of us." After that, Zhonghan often passed through Pingjiang Prefecture on the pretext of official business. Every time, he brought me the most fashionable fabrics and snacks from Bianqing, and sometimes even handwritten letters from my mother. Yunyang often teased me, telling me to accept his feelings. I was touched by his small, thoughtful gestures, but my resolve remained unchanged. Even so, he continued to visit Nishang workshop regularly, even more often than before. The following spring, I heard that Xie Yanwan had died of illness in bed. She had suffered heavy bleeding on her wedding day, and her health had never recovered. After Xu Hanqing learned the truth, he had grown to loathe her deeply. He didn't beat or scold her, or even confront her. Instead, he built a wall around himself with silent indifference. Xie Yanwan, with her arrogant and domineering temperament, could not bear such treatment. She bottled up her anger every day, with no way to vent it, and eventually died of a broken heart in bed. When I heard the news, tears streamed down my face silently for the grievances and injuries I had endured, and for Yao Yao, a handkerchief appeared in front of me. I looked up and saw it was Zhonghan, seeing me frozen in place. He gently wiped my tears with the handkerchief, his hand brushing my cheek softly. I felt the warmth of his palm. At that moment, I didn't hesitate to throw myself into his warm embrace. He patted my back gently, letting me cry bitterly in his arms. Little did we know, Xu Hanqing, standing outside the door, witnessed everything. His expression was complex. He begged me to speak to him alone one last time. I glanced at Zhonghan. "Go," he said. "This should be your last meeting with him." Confused, I still took Xu Hanqing to the tea house. The camellias in the tea house were in full bloom. He looked nothing like the man I had met in Bianqing last time, haggard and emaciated, with a pale, gaunt face. I brewed him a cup of Guyu Yencha, a type of spring tea. The steaming tea blurred his eyes. "I've come to say goodbye," he said. "The emperor has demoted me to Lingnan. I will depart in a few days." I looked up at him in surprise. His hand holding the teacup trembled slightly. No wonder Zhonghan had said this would be our last meeting. Lingnan was a poor, remote place. Few who went there ever returned. But how had he, a former minister of revenue, suddenly been demoted to Lingnan? I was lost in thought when I accidentally burned my lips on the tea I was drinking. "Jinxian, please allow me to call you that one last time," he said. "You are the only woman I have ever loved. I failed to keep my promise and let you down. Can you ever forgive me?" His eyes were moist, and his deep gaze reflected my resolute expression. "Forgive what?" I retorted sharply. "Forgive you for ignoring my life and poisoning me when I was 8 months pregnant. Forgive you for blindly trusting outsiders and killing our child. Or forgive you for distrusting me while believing every word of others. Xu Hanqing, I can say forgive to anyone else, but to you, I will never forgive you for as long as I live." His heart shattered into pieces as tears streamed down his face, soaking his robes. I stood up angrily and walked away without looking back, severing all ties with him. In the 5th year of the Qingyuan reign, Xu Hanqing, the prefect of Lingnan, passed away in office. When Zhonghan told me the news, I was surprisingly calm. He also told me that it was he who had arranged for Xu Hanqing's demotion to Lingnan. I smiled. Understanding dawning. "You may not believe it, but I guessed it long ago," I said, "when you told me that if I was willing, you could ensure he would never pester me again. I suspected you were behind his demotion to Lingnan, but his embezzlement of public funds was true, and his spending a fortune to buy an entire silverware shop for Xie Yanwan was also true. So everything that happened to him was well deserved. Nothing escapes my lady's discerning eyes," Zhonghan said, holding my hand, admiration shining in his brows. Over the years, he had traveled back and forth between Pingjiang Prefecture and Bianqing. I knew it was time to give him a real home in Pingjiang Prefecture. Zhonghan also arranged for a transfer to serve as the prefect of Pingjiang Prefecture. Staying by my side, I continued to run Nishang workshop with Yunyang. Thanks to the imperial golden plaque bestowed by the emperor, Nishang Workshop had become famous far and wide. Merchants from all over the country flocked to cooperate with us. Yunyang and I were kept busy but joyful. As for Zhong Han, besides his daily official duties, he also took great care to prepare my meals every day. For us, there was a long and promising future ahead.